For any of you who might wonder what a healthy relationship consists of, this podcast is for you. This is something that I have done a lot of digging into for my own personal reasons as well as professionally. And I think we all kind of want to know, what are those things we should be looking for in our relationships? The first thing that I have found to be most important is the level of control you have over your emotion. It is really hard to feel safe and secure with someone who cannot control their emotion, who often explodes and catches you off guard. And so being able to remain calm in tough situations actually is a really great sign of strength as opposed to any sign of weakness. That is definitely something that you want to look for and you want to aim for. Next, don't compare yourself to other people or other people's relationships. The truth is, if we're honest, most of what we see on social media is everybody's highlight reel. So if you are looking at your relationship and comparing it consistently to other people's in your life, what you perceive in person, and especially what you're perceiving or you're seeing online, that is completely unfair to the person that you're in a relationship with and just in life, because everybody else has their own issues. We all have our challenges. What happens behind closed doors, we don't talk about often around other people. So that comparison game is always going to leave you feeling less than or definitely not happy within the relationship that you have. Playing the comparison game will kill your gratitude. And gratitude for each other is really what keeps that love alive. Third, the way you speak to each other matters a lot more than what is actually said. If you've ever watched Friends, you'll understand the statement that I believe it was Joey said, "It's not what you said, it's how you said it." And I might have butchered that, but it is true. If you have something difficult to say, your tone and the way that you say that difficult message that you're trying to get across to that person is going to play a huge role in how that conversation goes. It may be difficult to believe, but most relationships break because of the tone that's used in the conversations with each other versus what content is being shared. Remember, you can be completely right with what you have to say, but ruin that message on your delivery and the way you speak to that person, the tone that you use. You want to talk to other people like you want to be spoken to. If you can follow that rule, you're going to be ahead of the game. Next, stop keeping score. If you're doing that, you're already losing. Because when you're paying attention to and you're racking up in your brain all the things that your partner has done and all the things that maybe you haven't done, you are focusing on the wrong thing. They could be doing really great things that you're missing because you're so focused on the things that they're not doing. So you want to stop keeping score and start paying attention to the positives that are happening in your relationship. The idea of relationships being 50-50 isn't always the case, right? Like some days I might do 80% and you might do 20. Some days you might do 10 and I do 90. It just depends on the day and the time. If I have a couple who is having challenges, they are both in a high state of stress, they wake up and they look at each other and one of them's like, "Listen, I have 5% in me today. Like I can't give any more than that, I'm sorry." And their partner is also like, "I also have 5%. I have 0%. I have 10%. Like that is a day that you decide as a couple to really extend some grace between the two of you so that you can get through the day. Like we're going to let some things slide. We're not going to get to all the housework. We're not going to be on it as far as our parenting game. We're just going to get through this day." And then you might have days where someone is, "I'm 80% today," or "I'm 100. What do you need? I can help you." That's great too. We also want that. But on the days where maybe I'm at 20% and my partner says, "You know what? I could pick up the 80. That to me is perfect. That's what we want. And essentially it would average out to a 50-50, right? But it doesn't mean it has to be like that every day. It can differ day by day. Regardless, you want to keep the scoreboard out of it and let your partner know. Make sure that they are aware that you are not keeping score, and that when they do something wrong and you have conversation about it, you can let that go and move forward. Okay, this is a really important one. Disagreements, very normal. Disrespect, not normal and not okay. So we are going to disagree in our relationships no matter what. Those disagreements are going to happen. Kind of going back to the emotional control and the tone. If you are disrespectful to your partner, that is an automatic no, and that is an automatic pushing you closer and closer to the end of that relationship. There is never a case in time where disrespect is okay. Disrespect can look different for every person, but for the most part, we're looking at insults, bringing up people's past, throwing things in their face, belittling them, threatening divorce. All of that is disrespectful and needs to be kept out of your mouth. It's crazy to me how people don't realize how powerful their words are. And the statement, sticks and stones will break my bones, words will never hurt me. That's a bunch of BS. If you are a person who has lived in this world, you know that's not true. Words can really, really, really hurt. So handle your tongue like it's a weapon, because it actually really is. Also, don't be afraid to apologize. Apologies actually show strength. I know that I work with a lot of people, and I've had discussions over, what it looks like to apologize and why people might struggle with it versus not struggling with it. But an apology is just simply acknowledging that I hurt your feelings, that maybe I could have done that better. It doesn't mean you're admitting fault. We can still apologize. There's so much strength and power that comes with a genuine apology of like, hey, I know I could have done that better, and so I'm really sorry for that. And when you apologize to someone, if their guard is up, you're going to notice an automatic, sometimes we can even see it in their body, where they rest and they kind of like their shoulders drop, the guard comes down, their defenses come down. And that's where those healthy conversations come in. Because as soon as I hear I'm sorry, then I'm like, okay, there's some acknowledgement of not fault, but like wrongdoing, right, on my part. Or on their part. So, I'm able to do some self-reflection and also acknowledge some of my wrongdoing and have a real, genuine, healthy conversation with you on how to repair. This next one is really, really important, and it plays a big role and is so much more in depth than what I'm going to say. But paying attention to and knowing what your partner's stress language looks like. A lot of this has to do with people's attachment styles. If I am an avoidant withdrawer, then I'm probably likely to partner with someone who is more of a pursuer. What that means is that when there's an argument or we're struggling at something, I tend to shut down because I'm a withdrawer, right? So I withdraw. This all has to do with my past history and upbringing, but I learned to kind of manage my conflict internally. And a lot of times what we see is people who are withdrawers are slower processors, and they tend to flood emotionally a lot quicker than someone who's a pursuer. So if someone comes at me and they are wanting to talk to me about something, even if it's not an aggressive nature, if I feel defensive, then I tend to get quiet and I withdraw, and I probably need some time. Now, if I get upset about something and I'm talking to someone who's a pursuer, most of the time, because I'm a withdrawer, I'm not going to be coming to them as much as they would come to me. But I might say, hey, that hurt my feelings. I didn't like it when you did that. And then that pursuer is going to be like, well, what happened? Tell me about it. Let's talk about it. And I might be like, that's it for me right now. I just needed to let you know how I feel. I don't want to talk about it right now. What's important about that is that there's not one way or the other that's better. There really isn't. We're all different in the way that we manage our stress and the way we manage our feelings and the way we process how we're feeling. So you have to respect your partner's way of feeling. I also know this is difficult with couples, because if you say, how do I respect someone who's a pursuer and then also someone who's a withdrawer? If I respect the withdrawer, then I'm going to give them time and space. But if I'm the pursuer, I don't want time and space. I want to talk about it. This is the only way that I know as a therapist that we have advised people to work on this, which is if I'm a withdrawer and I say, hey, this is bothering me, but I need some time, that I have to be very clear about what that time is. It is 3:30 and I really am struggling with this right now. I have some things to do. I'll come back to you in an hour. 2 hours tonight, after dinner, we can talk about it. What you do then is, even though the pursuer wants to talk about it in that moment, if they respect your way of managing stress, they're going to know, okay, my partner said they don't want to talk about it. That's frustrating to me, but we're not shelving it. We're not sweeping under the rug. We are going to talk about it in an hour after dinner, at the latest tomorrow morning, whatever your partner says, right? But the withdrawer's job is to put a time frame on it and then to honor that time frame. And the pursuer's job is to allow that time and to be there, be present when that withdrawer comes over and says, okay, I'm ready to talk about it. Okay. And then it's talked about in a calm and healthy way. As frustrating as it is, I know pursuers really don't like this. One, because they just want to talk about it in the moment. But two, sometimes emotions are high, and pursuers, they don't flood as emotionally quickly as withdrawers do. So they just like, what is the big deal? Let's talk about it. But what happens when we have conversations in high states of emotion is it leads to fights. It leads to words that are said that later we regret, because again, we're thinking with our emotional brain and not with our logical brain. So really taking the time to step away, take a break, even if it's 10-15 minutes, you're going to bode well in the long run, better off in the long run by doing that, because you're going to have more of a logical, sound conversation, which is going to end in better repair. Another thing that I have noticed and have heard a lot, especially from younger individuals, is that we should always have the feelings of being in love. And that's just not reality, you guys. I wish it was. It's not. You're going to have difficult days. No relationship is always sunshine and rainbows every day. So allowing for some grace in those periods and those times where maybe you look at your person and you're not necessarily feeling in love with them, but you still carry love for them. You still value them. You treasure them. You know their worth in your relationship together. That is what carries a relationship long term. Chemistry is amazing. We all know that, but consistency is more important. So show up even when you're mad, even when you're tired, even when you're irritated, and be the person that you know your partner needs to be, because it might just be in that moment that you're not feeling it, but that hour later, the next day, the next week, it comes and goes, and that love stays the same. The in love might fade and again come and go, but that love that you have for them stays consistent, and consistency is what matters. The minute you wake up every day, you want to prioritize your partner and think about how you can connect with them, make them feel special, reach out to them, let them know you love them, a hug, a kiss on the cheek, whatever it is, a sweet text, all of those things throughout the day is what continues to build up and maintain a level of intimacy between the two of you that then leads to a better experience in the bedroom. But it doesn't just start in the bedroom. It has to start at the beginning of every day and work its way through those days the best you can. So anytime you have a thought that passes your mind about your partner, you want to reach out and let them know that, whether it's in person, over text, call, email, I don't care. Sending them a nice package, ordering DoorDash, whatever it might be. Those are the things that really grow people to be closer and closer together. You want to create a space of emotional safety with your partner. Some, I don't want to stereotype, but men don't quite understand what emotional safety means. And I'll tell you from my perspective, personally as a woman, but also as a therapist, feeling emotionally safe means I can just be me. I feel like I can be open and honest and raw, and no matter what I say, even if it's difficult for you to hear, you're gonna stand by my side. You're not gonna scream at me, you're not gonna yell at me, you're not gonna hold it against me, you're not gonna leave me, you're not gonna judge me. You're gonna maybe have a difficult conversation, maybe tell me your thoughts about that, even if it hurts my feelings, maybe work with me through something, or maybe stand there and support me, but no matter what, I know you're not leaving me. That is emotional safety. The next one is one that I personally have had a history of struggling with, and I believe I've gotten a lot better. But we don't want to weaponize silence. As a withdrawer myself, I tend to, obviously when I get emotionally flooded, I withdraw and get quiet. And sometimes that has been seen as a weapon or used maybe as a weapon. What we want to do is make sure we set boundaries and we're very clear about the space that we take. There is nothing wrong with taking space. Nothing. It's actually highly advised. The problem is when you take space from your partner, you need to be very verbal about how you're taking that space and why you're taking that space so that they understand where they're at. They're not left kind of wandering and wondering what's happening. You're very clear about the reason why you need to take it. And again, going back to what I said before, coming back and having a conversation about it when you're ready. Also, don't be afraid to check in before a crisis becomes a crisis. So we all tend to know our partners pretty well. If you have been together long enough, you should know them. You can read their body language, maybe certain things they're saying, the way they look and the way they're acting. Ask, hey, are you okay? Things seem kind of off. How are you feeling? Nothing wrong with that. And a lot of times just by asking, you're showing a genuine attempt to connect with them, to address any concern that might be going on, and that can soften what would have been a heavier blow later down the road had you not acknowledged it. So don't be afraid to check in with your partner. The last thing I want to say, and I'm sure there's a lot more, but for today, is that you want to protect your relationship from outsiders. When you involve other people, what you're doing is you're providing a space in which other people can come into your relationship and have a negative effect on it, or judge your relationship from an outside perspective when they're not an active party. It is not helpful in any way to involve family, certain friends. This is what therapists are for. So keep what happens in your relationship between you and your partner. What we find is people who overshare with outsiders tend to actually do more damage to the relationship than support. And I know, from a therapist perspective, I'll talk with people about grief and the things that come out of other people's mouths when they're trying to say encouraging things to you about how you're managing your grief, but really they're just making it worse. And I know people are not intentionally trying to make it worse, right? So I'm going to assume the same thing from people who I might go to talk about my relationship to. They probably mean well, but the chances are they're actually going to affect me in more of a negative way, and or my partner. So if they really support me, but they don't support my partner, then it's going to hurt my partner down the road if they ever found out, or it's going to affect my relationship with that person when I get back together with my partner and they're like, why are you doing that after all the stuff you told me about them, So it just doesn't end well if you involve other people, and it doesn't need to be anything that is shared outside of your relationship with that person. Outside of, obviously, a therapist, and maybe a really close, trusted friend. I mean, we definitely need support. So I don't want you to feel isolated, or anyone to feel that way, and that with whatever they struggle with in their relationship, they can't talk to someone. But the best bet is to get a therapist who's not involved, outside third-party perspective, a professional, so can give you some really good information and tips on how to manage your challenges, and then kind of let you handle things on your own. So all of those things are really, 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 really important, and if you can do them, you're going to notice so much success in your relationship long term, and you'll have a lot more hope for the future than most other people out there do. So I don't know if any of this has applied to you. If it does, definitely feel free to subscribe to the channel, share with anybody else that might benefit from hearing these things, and then check in with me next for my podcast coming up.